in that first encounter. In the video, you can hear Hemphill also saying he hopes the other officers stomp out Tyre. MPD fired Hemphill for violating at least 5 policies and protocols. They include personal conduct, truthfulness, compliance with regulations for his taser, compliance with regulations for his uniform and issued equipment, as well as mishandling recovered property. All right, now our Brittany Moncrief is live outside of the courtroom where you're seeing everybody walk in right now. Brittany, I have seen Attorney Crump, DA Steve Mulroy, the parents of Tyre Nichols, Rodney, and Rovon Wells come into that courtroom. Who else are you seeing walk into the courtroom now?
Absolutely, Aaron. We just saw, as you mentioned, we saw the family of Tyre Nichols come into the courtroom just shortly before, maybe about less than 5 minutes ago. And then following them, we saw District Attorney Steve Mulroy also enter into the courtroom. And just moments before, we saw the 5 officers, along with their attorneys, just enter into the courtroom. Now, I'll step aside so you can see a little bit of what's happening behind us. You can see there's a line of Shelby County deputies that are here. There's about 10 that are waiting outside the courtroom with us now. As I mentioned, everyone is already inside the courtroom, so we're waiting to hear what happens, what comes of this arraignment. Again, this is the first scheduled court appearance of the 5 officers charged in Tyre Nichols' death, and so we are waiting outside the courtroom to find out what happens in this arraignment. Now, also happening today, as you know, following the death of Tyre Nichols, there were many other cases and people that came forward that claimed that they also were victimized by Memphis Police Department's Scorpion Unit, which has now been disbanded. But there's been other people who have come forward, and they said that they've also been victimized, and some of them have even sought out representation. We're told that one of those people, Montarius Harris, he is also going to be arraigned in court today. Now, we'll be waiting to find out what happens with his case today as well. Again, I'll step aside so you can see one more time that this is outside the courtroom of where the 5 officers charged in Tyre Nichols' death will be.
Brittany, thank you so much for that. We're going to listen into the courtroom because it does look like they are just getting started. So let's take a listen.
Everyone's best effort. This case may take some time. Your attorneys are going to be receiving the discovery. Depending on how voluminous the discovery is, it may take some time for the state to collect it all, to turn it over to your attorneys, for your attorneys to review that discovery, to prepare their motions and prepare their case. So be patient. Work with your attorneys, cooperate with them, meet with them, go over the discovery. Make sure that if there are any delays, that these delays aren't on account of any of your actions. To those also in attendance, as I've explained to the defendants, this case can take some time. So we do ask for your patience, your continued patience, your continued civility in this case. We understand that there may be some high emotions in this case, but we ask that you continue to be patient with us. Everyone involved wants this case to be concluded as quickly as possible, but it's important for you all to understand that the state of Tennessee, as well as each one of these defendants, have an absolute right to a fair trial, and I will not allow any behavior that could jeopardize that right. So with that being said, we thank you all for being present. State, understanding that there may be some discovery that needs to be collected, we are going to continue this case out a little bit further to make sure the discovery is concluded. We're going to reset this matter until May 1st, 9 a.m. State, is there anything else?
Your Honor, the only other thing on behalf of the state is I have a protective order as to each of the defendants to allow certain digital discovery video evidence to be provided.
Any objection by any account?
No objection, Your Honor.
No objection, Your Honor.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Ms. Massey, is there anything else on behalf of your client?
No, Your Honor. We did file our motion for discovery this morning.
Okay. Mr. Ballin, anything on behalf of your client?
No, Your Honor.
Mr. Perry?
No, Your Honor, but we did file a motion for bill of particulars pursuant to Rule 7C, Tennessee Rules of Criminal Procedure.
Mr. Stengel, anything on
Nothing
behalf?
further this morning, Your Honor. Thank you.
All right, Mr. Summers?
Nothing further on behalf of Mr. Smith this morning, Your Honor.
All right, gentlemen, we'll see you back here May 1st on that date. And we will now excuse the defendants and their defense counsel. We're asking everyone else in the courtroom to remain in the courtroom, remain seated until you're excused.
And with regard to everybody else, I would let the court know that the family is here. Just want to acknowledge that.
Thank you.
You're all excused.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Again, you're just watching the initial court hearing for those 5 fired officers. Out of it, you heard the judge say that this case will take some time in it. He is pushing back this court date until May 1st. That will be the next time that those 5 fired officers are going to be in a courtroom. But Brittany is outside of the courtroom. We're going to take a live look there so we can see what's happening outside of the courtroom.
That's right. The 5 officers and their attorney have just walked out of the courtroom. We still have some that are walking still. You can see them going by, and they're exiting the courtroom right now along with their attorneys. Right now, people have been asking questions, but no one is speaking, not even Tyre Nichols' family. When they walked in, they did not give any comment, did not speak with media. They just walked straight in. This all happening in less than 5 minutes, really. Again, Tyre Nichols' family, we have not seen them exit out of the courtroom yet, but we did just see those 5 officers leave out with their attorneys. Again, we're waiting outside. We'll see when Tyre Nichols' family comes out, because we know that their attorney, Ben Crump, will be giving a press conference shortly after. We're not sure exactly what time that would happen, but we're going to wait in the hallway to find out when that press conference will take place. We were initially told that it might be in the auditorium, but that may not be the case. So we're all waiting around right now to see what will happen and what Attorney Ben Crump has to say in regards to what took place today in arraignment court. Again, this is the first time the 5 officers have appeared in court. Tyre Nichols' family was here as well. No one gave any questions or comments or had anything to say to the media, to any of us, but we know that there will be a press conference shortly, and that's why we're waiting outside for that press conference, and that press conference will be given by Attorney Ben Crump. And so we'll continue to stay here to see what will happen next. We're going to go over here just to see if any of the other lawyers, there's Tyre Nichols' family right now leaving out of the courtroom. Okay, we're just listening in to see what the information is. Okay, so it looks like that Attorney Ben Crump will still give that press conference shortly. We're going to be waiting out here to see when that takes place and when that happens, so that way we can bring you the latest information and give response as to what took place into the courtroom today, and then hear from the family. Hopefully, we'll continue to stay out here. It looks like everyone is getting ready to disperse a little bit, and I guess we're going to a different area, but again, we are waiting for this press conference to happen. And this isn't the only thing that's happening today involving the Scorpion unit. Again, as I mentioned, other cases of people have come forward that claim that they've also been victimized by members of the Scorpion unit, some even citing the exact same 5 officers. And one of those people is Tadarrius Harris, who has brought a lawsuit up against the city because he says he was victimized by the same 5 officers from the Scorpion unit just 3 days before Tyre Nichols. Now, for Tadarrius Harris, we are expecting to hear about his arraignment today. He will also be in court today, and so we'll find out what happens. We spoke to his lawyers yesterday, and they said that they're hoping that that case, or the charges that he still has, will be dismissed because of everything that's happening involving the Scorpion unit, and which is now disbanded. I'm going to step aside again because I do hear some more commotion behind me, and I'm not sure exactly what's happening. So I want to listen in to see. Okay, so we're still waiting outside. It looks like some of the attorneys might be walking out now, representing Tyre Nichols' family, but we're not. Okay, let's see. Okay, I don't think they're ready yet. Again, it's just a lot of us are still outside the courtroom. A lot of media are still waiting outside the courtroom because we know that Attorney Ben Crump will be speaking and holding a press conference in regards to what took place today in the courtroom. Again, as we mentioned, this is the first time the 5 officers charged in Tyre Nichols' death have appeared in court. And so today you saw those 5 officers appear in court. They actually all attended the courtroom today, as well as Tyre Nichols' family. So we are now waiting outside to see what happens. We also saw District Attorney Steve Morroy. He was also in the courtroom. We have not seen him exit the courtroom yet. And I'm actually looking through the back glass mirror, and I can see Tyre Nichols' family talking with their attorney, talking with some of the investigators that are part of the Crump law firm. It doesn't appear like they're coming out just yet, but we know that they will be coming out shortly for a press conference. We're going to step over to the side because I do see some Sheriff County deputies giving some instructions. So we're going to try to get as close as we can to see what is taking place. Excuse me.
Everybody here and everybody in Memphis, and I guess everywhere, saw that video, and there needed to be a statement made, and people needed to step up and do the right thing sooner rather than later. We felt that need, and that's what we did.
And it's important to have questions answered.
Yeah, Memphis and the whole world needs to see that what's right is done in this case, and it needs to happen sooner rather than later.
How's having the 5 officers all involved going to play a role in this?
5 defendants always presents a challenge in terms of logistics and everything. I think y'all saw that in there today. It was a cramped courtroom and all that. We believe it's important that everybody who took part in this criminality, everybody who did something criminal is brought to justice in this case. So it's just part of the fight.
So, video that could possibly come out. I know that Attorney Massey put in a motion to preserve a lot of video from SkyCop cameras, many of which we haven't even seen yet.
So it was a city that, I guess, released the videos to the media and to everybody. It's our obligation to make sure all that video is preserved. Any video having anything to do with this case is preserved and given to defense counsel. We can't release it to the media and stuff like that. So I know that there's been a lot of video that's been found in the case and taken in the case, and we'll preserve it all, and it's all been reviewed, and it'll be given to defense counsel.
Is it a single frame of video? Is it a single frame of video?
Video from the scene in particular that may or may not have been shared. How unusual is it to have that in this type of case, and can you talk about that video at all?
You're talking about the video released of the video from the Castlegate camera?
No, actually, shot by a police officer at the scene.
Okay, I can't comment on facts of the case that may come up, during the litigation.
With the city releasing the video prior to this, did that hinder your case at all?
No, it didn't. It didn't hinder our case. But our job remains the same. These 5 defendants are all entitled to fair trials, and that's what we're gonna give them.
Is it a single frame of video that suggests Tyre Nichols was driving recklessly?
As I said, there's been video taken from all over the place, trying to get to the bottom of every fact of this case, and we just have to wait and see as it plays out.
Anything else you'd like to say to the Nichols family right now?
Well, I've gotten the pleasure to meet the Nichols family. They're heartbroken, and obviously it's a terrible thing. They lost their son. They love their son. They still love their son, and they're good people. I got to spend some time with them this morning, and after I leave y'all, I'll be with them some more. I couldn't be more impressed by the mom and the dad and the patience and the understanding they have with us and the statements they've made out to the public. That it's important that Tyre is honored in a peaceful way and in the right way, and great people.
That kind of easy.
How long have you been here?
And
have you ever seen anything, or have you ever dealt with anything like this?
We'll take both the questions. First, the investigation is ongoing. So is there a possibility of more charges? Of course there is. The general my boss has been extremely clear that this is step 1. And today was just the start of the court process. And as you asked, the investigation goes on, and we'll see where that leads us.
Is this tough for you emotionally?
This is a terrible situation. I mean, we all had to watch that video. And I think everybody's heart went out. And, today's court date 1 to try to get some justice and to do what's right in this case, and we'll see it out to the end.
So you spoke about the family. It can't have been easy for the family to be...
Unfortunately, in this job, you deal with heartbreaking things after heartbreaking things.
I know this is kind of putting the cart before the horse, but plea agreements, would you be open to that?
So
to plea deals?
Cart before the horse may be the understatement.
Yeah. I mean, is that even on the table? Do you want to see that, or how determined are you to see this go to trial, to have this out in open court?
So this is day 1. Okay, they just got an attorney. Now the attorney, the evidence is still being collected. So I can't comment on that. It is way too early, but what I can tell you is we are determined to see this thing through.
How long have you been with the district attorney's office?
21 years.
And your your work here and your time, how much experience have you had with the Scorpion? How much experience have you had with the Scorpion?
So we're gonna.
Sir, how much experience have you had with the Scorpion?
Excuse me, y'all.
Yeah.
But no,
He's going to end it. He's ended it now. Let him go.
Mr. Crump is going to make.
You were late. Let him go.
Oh, we couldn't get in.
Your fault.
Pleasure to see you again.
Where are you, Ryan?
You were just hearing from a representative from the district attorney's office telling reporters, including our Brittany Moncrief, who is in that crowd, that they are working to preserve all of the evidence. We saw that video that was released just 3 weeks ago. Again, that video, they say much more is in all of that discovery and evidence, but we're going to go back out to Brittany because we're hearing from somebody else there in the courtroom.
We want to start out by saying that understandably the nation's heart is filled with frustration, with grief due to the death of Tyre Nichols, and we understand that. These emotions absolutely should be channeled into demanding change in the way that we police our communities. It's also vital that we extend these demands to the way that we treat minorities and people of lower incomes in our criminal justice system. Let's not forget that my client is a black man in a courtroom in America. This is a country where black people are incarcerated at 5 times the rate of white people. A country where black people are 7.5 times more likely to be wrongfully convicted of murder than white people. Much has been said about the ways that the system has failed Mr. Nichols. I will work tirelessly to make sure that the system does not fail Mr. Mills and that a fair outcome is achieved. I want to remind everyone that the resolution of this indictment, to which Mr. Mills has pled not guilty, must be carried out without sympathy or prejudice, that it must be based on the facts and the law and not the raw emotions that our country is currently experiencing. Justice for Mr. Nichols will not be achieved at the expense of justice for Mr. Mills. We have a very long road of investigation and litigation ahead of us. Again, I implore the public to be patient, to be cautious in judging Mr. Mills. We look forward to defending him. Thank you.
Why is he not guilty? Why is he not guilty? He was in a group of 5 officers.
Thank you. Well, you were just hearing from Blake Ballin. He is the attorney representing Desmond Mills. He is one of the 5 former officers now charged in the death of Tyre Nichols. He went on to say that his client pled not guilty. That's the first we're hearing of any pleas being made in this case. He also went on to say that he is hoping the public won't rush to judgment of his client, going on to say that his client is still a black man in America in a courtroom, and he is hoping that justice as well for Tyre Nichols will be served for his client as well. Again, the first time we actually got to see those 5 officers outside of that video that was released just 3 weeks ago today, the first time in the courtroom. That whole proceeding taking just about 5 minutes, really quick in the courtroom. Again, coming out of it, if you are just joining us, the next court date will be May 1st. We aren't sure how the other officers have pled in this case, but we do know that Desmond Mills is pleading not guilty in this case. You are taking a live look outside of that courtroom. Let's take a look at how we got to where we are today, February 17th. On January 7th, officers pulled over first time in the courtroom. On January 7th, officers pulled over Tyre Nichols near Rains and Ross Road in Hickory Hill. They said he was driving recklessly. During a first encounter, video shows officers yanking Nichols out of the car and throwing him on the ground. Nichols then runs away. Video shows the officers catching up to him near Castlegate and Bear Creek, then beating him. It took several minutes before medics helped Nichols, and an ambulance took him to the hospital. Nichols then spent the next 3 days on life support in the hospital. On January 10th, 3 days after his traffic stop, the Tennessee Bureau of Investigation announced Nichols died from his injuries. More than a week later, on January 18th, the Department of Justice announced its civil rights investigation into Tyre Nichols' death. And we'll get back to that timeline in just a minute, but right now, DA Steve Mulroy is outside of the courtroom talking to reporters, so we're going to listen into what he has to say after this first court hearing.
Case is about characterizing these kinds of things, but I think it's fair to say that what we've learned so far is a cause for concern about an overall culture that needs to be revisited, and I think it really opens up the need for a broader conversation about police reform, not only here in Memphis and Shelby County, but I think across the country.
What about specifically about supervision within the Memphis Police Department? We're talking about culture, and there's obviously a lack of accountability that C.J. Davis said to the city council. As far as what you're seeing, do you think there's also, what is your comment about the lack of supervision that was lacking that night?
Well, I mean, I think Chief Davis herself would probably acknowledge that a lack of supervision on that evening, was playing a role in what happened. And I think whenever you have these specialized units, that there is a danger that they can become.
Well, let him finish his sentence. I mean, I don't know why she's pulling him away. Let him finish his sentence. Your spokesperson is trying to pull you away. I mean,
tell me about the culture and the problems with the culture of the Scorpion unit.
I think that's really a question better directed to the Memphis police folks. I just think in general, sometimes these units can become overly aggressive and they need more supervision, and that clearly was a problem that evening. And I think it opens up a broader question about reform. Now, if you'll excuse me.
Sure, there you go. Thank you for finishing that.
I needed to go.
Thank you for letting him finish that.
You texted me to come, right?
Yes.
Okay.
I'm sorry. Okay.
Take care.
Well, you heard just a little bit of what DA Mulroy was saying, but he was talking about those specialized units. Of course, we know all of the 5 officers were in the Scorpion unit, and he was talking a little bit about how those specialized units can become overly aggressive. And he started to go on talking about how they're looking at reforming the police department and some of these units. Of course, we've heard a lot about the Scorpion unit and within the police department in the last few weeks since this beating occurred. Now, we do know that all officers involved in Tyre Nichols' death belong to the Memphis Police Department gang unit, which is the Scorpion unit. Chief C.J. Davis jump-started this unit, and it's really similar to a unit that was shut down in Atlanta called the Red Dog unit. Now, she was also let go from that unit. November 12th to 2021, officers, though, hit the streets for the first time in the Scorpion unit. Mayor Strickland announced it, saying that it would clean up some of our streets. Scorpion is an acronym. It stands for Street Crime Operation to Restore Peace. Now, the purpose was supposed to focus on reducing violent crimes in what MPD calls hotspot areas or high crime areas throughout the city. Now, we don't know a lot about the training or even the requirements for the Scorpion unit. What we do know, though, is Chief Davis did run that similar unit in Atlanta. It was called the Red Dog unit again, and they too are now disbanded. That goes on to what we just heard DA Steve Mulroy saying about these specialized units. They sometimes have a lack of supervision and they can become overly aggressive. I'm keeping an eye on what's happening right outside of the courtroom. It looks like somebody else may be speaking. We'll check back in with them.
Hey. I don't know if you all can you all hear me right now?
Stay on your side.
Can y'all hear me right now? They can hear you?
Can you hear me? Hello?
Brittany, we see your shot up. Can you tell us what's going on outside of the courtroom right now?
Absolutely. So right now we're waiting outside the courtroom because we're told that the family will be coming out shortly. And so as you can see, it's been different people coming one at a time, unplanned. And so we've been scrambling trying to get to each person that speaks. Just a little while ago, you just heard from District Attorney Steve Mulroy, and he was talking about reforming the police department and making some changes. We heard some people talk about the supervision for the Scorpion unit, and he spoke about that and talking about how sometimes when there's a lack of supervision, you you have instances that get out of hand, and unfortunately in this case, it ended in the death of Tyre Nichols. Also, we heard from attorney Blake Ballin, who is representing Desmond Mills, one of the officers charged in Tyre Nichols' death. He mentioned that his client had pled not guilty today, and what he said was that he wanted not only justice for Tyre Nichols, but also justice for his client, Desmond Mills. We're still also waiting again outside the courtroom. We're told that the family will be coming out shortly. I don't see them peeking through the window. Earlier I could see them through the window, but this time I don't see them. So we're just waiting outside for them to come. We don't know the exact time of when it's happening, but we're going to stay posted here so that way we can catch them again. People have been coming out back to back, and so we've just been scrambling trying to get to each person that is speaking. We also heard from the district attorney's office earlier who talked about the death of Tyre Nichols. I'm going to step to the side because, hey, Devin, this way. I'm going to step to the side because there's another attorney that is speaking, and we're going to go over here and listen in.
As far as Mr. Bean, how is he doing, and how are you prepared to defend him?
Well, I mean, starting out with the notion that he's innocent until proven guilty, which is a rubric of our society in this country, number one. Number two, I know that there's been a lot of statements about Mr. Bean in the press over the last, month, and a lot of those statements are misleading about the person that he is. Mr. Bean has been nothing but a respectful, a good young man throughout his life. And on that particular night, you look at an isolated incident and try to measure the person. And so there are a lot of statements about him as a person that are just flat out untrue. And you look at the level of involvement of each individual defendant. And in that particular case, he was doing his job, no more, no less. He never struck anybody. He never did anything other than his job. Right now, we're in a posture that I've never seen a person charged before anybody knows the cause of death. There's no definitive information regarding cause of death at all. And so we got 5 individuals charged with murder. I represent one, and it's an honor because at this point in time, I've never seen people jump to conclusions about an isolated part of a 2-minute excerpt about what was supposed to have happened on a particular night. And I stand by the notion that right now, due process in this matter has not taken place properly. There should be justice for Tyre Nichols, absolutely. But I also stand by the fact that I am going to demand justice for Tadarrius Bean.
Has Mr. Bean made any statement to you, written any statement? We heard from Mr.
Is Mr. Bean?
From Mr. Ballin.
Oh, sorry.
His client wrote a statement. Has your client wrote a statement?
We've gone through a lot of information. There was a lot of information given on the front end during the time that when he was an active police officer and they were doing their inquiries at that time. There was certain information that was gleaned, from my understanding, administratively. But there's been no follow-up statements as of right now.
Sir, what in that video tells us that your client, Tadarrius Bean, is innocent?
Tadarrius Bean, according to the video, was seen apprehending a person after.
Every last one of them beating their mind.
Yeah.
That's murder.
Carry on, sir.
You see it like we see it. We saw the same thing.
What in that video tells us that your client, Tadarrius Bean, is innocent?
Say that once again. I can't hear it because you got people that are part of the press that are saying things.
We've all seen the video. What in that video tells us that your client, Tadarrius Bean, is innocent?
Tadarrius Bean never touched him in any way, striking him, period. Tadarrius Bean has the ability as a law enforcement officer to make a lawful arrest based off of a call coming in. And so at this time, that's where we're standing right now. That Tadarrius Bean was doing his job at that time, and he never struck him. And there has been no information that we have seen as of right now that indicates that there's any sort of information that we can rely on to say that it's murder.
Why didn't he intervene? Why didn't he intervene and stop his colleagues beating a man to death?
I think you hear his voice consistently saying, "Sit up, man, so you can get air," etc., and things like that. I think you hear him consistently saying that. And Tadarrius Bean at no point in time did anything that would be different from a person who's doing his job.
He didn't stop his colleagues killing a man, though.
I'm sorry.
He didn't stop his colleagues killing a man. Simple. Why didn't he intervene and say, enough, stop?
Right. I want to hear you answer that one.
I want to hear...
That's his duty as a police officer.
I'm going to do something rare. Have you ever made an arrest?
No.
Have you ever jumped out of a car trying to apprehend somebody who you think might have committed a carjacking, a robbery, a rape, a kidnapping? Have you ever done that?
I've never stood by and let one of my colleagues kill a man.
And if a person gets called on a scene, you have a duty as a police officer to respond. If you're not on that, and to be absolutely clear, Mr. Bean was not. Mr. Bean was not on the first scene, so he don't know what happened.
Does he regret any of his actions that night?
I'm sorry?
Does he regret any of his actions that night?
I think at this point he probably regrets being a Memphis police officer on that night, because had he not been, he wouldn't have been called to do his job.
Is there anything he'd like to say to the family of Tyre Nichols today?
I won't say what Mr. Bean says regarding the family. I will say that from my heart regarding the family, anytime you have a young man that dies, it's sad, and it's a horrible thing, and we don't want that to happen. So, but as far as where we are as of right now, we're trying to see whether or not a person can get justice the way that anybody else can, and that's my job.
Is telling him to get up for air the same as rendering aid?
I think at the time that at the conclusion of making the arrest, from my understanding, there were people that were on the scene that are professional health renderers, from my understanding. So to say that, yes, ma'am, I watched the video. Go ahead.
Have you seen all of the video at this point, or what have you seen?
I have.
Okay, so how many hours is it worth of, I mean, have they turned everything over?
I'm sorry, ma'am, I couldn't.
DA Mulroy has says that there's 20 hours, essentially, of video. Have you seen all of that?
No, nobody's seen it. We'll see it at the same time.
Would you put in a motion to preserve all of the video from the route?
Right, we want that. Yes, we're joining that motion. I think one has been filed.
You're going to join that motion.
Correct.
How much more video do you think can be collected? Obviously, it's video that could possibly tell more of this story of this chase on foot between Tyre Nichols and the 5 officers, or at least 2 or 3 of those officers. Do we know if your client, Mr. Bean, was one of the officers chasing after Tyre Nichols on foot?
I apologize. I just can't hear the whole question. I'm sorry. Just say it one more time.
Do
I'm
we
getting a lot of background.
If your client, Mr. Tadarrius Bean, is one of the officers possibly chasing Tyre Nichols on foot?
During the second scene. My client is on the second scene.
Right. But when going to the second scene, do we know if he's one of the officers chasing?
Not going to the second scene, but at the second scene, yes, he's doing his job.
Okay,
so there's a suggestion that there's a connection somehow between Tyre Nichols and the officers involved, that they knew each other, and there was a reason why those officers might have wanted to inflict violence on Tyre Nichols. There are rumors. Can you comment on that?
I haven't seen anything to suggest any truth to any of that at all. Period. I haven't seen any of that.
What's your name, sir?
John Keith Perry.
John Keith Perry, and you represent Tadarrius Bean.
Yes, sir.
Thanks very much.
Right. Thank you all. Thank you all.
Thank you so much. Okay, and you just heard from Attorney John Keith Perry, who is representing Tadarrius Bean in this case in the death of Tyre Nichols, one of the 5 officers charged in his death. And as you just listened in and just heard, we asked a stream of questions, and he says that his client, Tadarrius Bean, was not at the first scene of Tyre Nichols' traffic stop. He said that he was there at the second scene, and he says that his client did not participate in the beating. We also asked him about the violations of not administering aid, and he says that his client did try to administer aid by asking Tyre if he could sit up and if he could breathe and if he had enough air. Now, we did ask, does that mean if asking, if he has enough air, is that equivalent to administering aid? And he was kind of unable to really answer that question. As you can see, emotions are riding high. You can hear it in the attorney's voice, as well as people who are standing around outside of the courtroom. You hear a lot of people that we've seen in the past, some of the protesters that are here, and they're angry. And the whole time that Tadarrius Bean's lawyer was speaking with media, you heard some of the protesters, shouting back at him and going against whatever he said and saying that, no, these officers were involved in his death and should be charged and should be found guilty. That was coming from the protesters. And so right now you can kind of see still the attorney going back and forth. This is one of the protesters that has been at every protest. She's also speaking and has spoken out in regards to Tyre Nichols' death, demanding justice. She's been at every protest. And so, again, we're standing outside the courtroom. We have not left this position. Different people have been coming out to speak with media. We're still waiting to hear from Attorney Ben Crump and Tyre Nichols' family. They are still waiting inside on the other. There's a private room to the left of the courtroom, so they're still waiting inside that room, and we have not seen them come out yet. We did see District Attorney Steve Morrow go inside that room where the family is, so we don't know if they're speaking with Attorney Morroy right now, District Attorney Morroy, or if they're just preparing to come out for the press conference. But we're going to wait outside. We're going to see what happens. We're going to wait for Attorney Ben Crump and his team to come out to speak with media. We're told that there will be a press conference shortly. Now, the District Attorney's office did say that they were going to be speaking with the family following this court appearance. So I'm guessing that that could be what is taking place, since we did see District Attorney Steve Morrow go into that office. We are still waiting outside, where we have some of the protesters who have come in protesters that we've seen since the beginning, since day one when Tyre Nichols died. So we do hear some of the protesters, and they're yelling at the attorney of Tadarrius Bean, just calling him out on some of the comments that he made in regards to his client. He said that he wants justice for Tyre Nichols, but he also wants justice for his client, Tadarrius Bean, because he says that his client did not participate in the beating and was not at the first scene, but was at the second scene. He claims that his client, Mr. Bean, did try to administer aid by saying to Tyre to get up and asking him if he could, if he had enough air. Again, we also heard from Desmond Mills' attorney, who was also outside the courtroom, and he said the same thing as Mr. Bean's attorney, where he wants justice for Tyre, but also justice for his client, Desmond Mills. We did earlier hear from District Attorney Steve Morroy. We also heard from another representative from his office. And so we're going to continue to stay out here to see what happens next. Again, like I've been saying, people have been coming in and out, back and forth. Different people have been coming out. So we've been trying to catch everyone as they come out and as they come out of the courtroom. Again, the family is still off to the side of the courtroom, and they are there inside. We know that they'll be coming out shortly to do a press conference. I did just see a light come on in the back, but that might be for something else. But we're going to continue to stay out here to see what happens next. Hopefully, Ben Crump and his team will be out shortly, as well as Tyre Nichols' family. We do know that they're inside. We've seen them go in there, but they have not come out yet. I do hear some commands from some of the Shelby County Sheriff's deputies, so I'm going to go a little closer to see what they're saying. I don't know if they're telling people to back up or if they're allowing us to come forward. So we're going to go a little closer to see what's happening. Okay, let's slide in here. Okay, so we have three. We have three Shelby County deputies that are guarding the door and standing outside the door. This is the door where Tyre Nichols' family is on the other side, along with their attorney, Ben Crump. I'm actually looking through the glass, and I can see some of the family members, or some of the members of the, yes, I see some of the family members, as well as some of the staff from the district attorney's office also sitting side by side, and they're all on the other side of that glass. So it looks like they probably did meet. We'll confirm that when they come out, but we can see just through the glass that they are sitting on the opposite side. We'll continue to stay out here to see when they'll be coming out. I don't see much movement happening inside. Okay, so we did hear one of our photogs in, he did hear that that they will be coming out momentarily. So we'll stay here this whole time to see when the family will come out. Again, as I mentioned earlier, this isn't the only court appearance that we are hearing today. This is the first appearance for the 5 officers, but there's also another client, another Memphian who has filed a lawsuit against the Scorpion unit, and we're told that that person will also be in court today for arraignment. Now, there's a possibility that his charges may be dropped. We don't know, but we'll also bring information on that. That person is Tadarrius Harris, and he claims that he was beaten by the Scorpion unit just 3 days prior. So again, we'll be keeping an eye on that information as well. Again, outside the courtroom, we're waiting for
a lot of
Tyre
people
Nichols' family and their attorney.
Brittany, can you hear me? A lot of people coming forward with complaints against the Scorpion unit.
Yes.
We did just hear from John Keith Perry, the lawyer for Tadarrius Bean. Now, he did say that his client never hit Nichols, but did he say if his client was one of the officers holding Nichols up while another officer did hit and beat him? Were you able to hear that?
Well, I wasn't able to hear his answer to that question because we were a little bit further back, but we do know what he did say was that his client, Tadarrius Bean, was not at the initial traffic stop, or he was not at the first scene of when Tyre Nichols was pulled over, but he arrived at the second scene. And his lawyer also said that he was not one of the officers who participated in the beating of Tyre Nichols. Instead, he said that his client could be heard on video asking Tyre Nichols if he needed more air, if he had enough air. Now, what we did ask him was if he needed air, we asked him, is that equivalent to rendering aid? Because we know that these officers have also violated the regulations and the policies for rendering aid. And so we did ask, is that equivalent to rendering aid, just by telling him and asking him, can he have enough air? And it appears he wasn't really able to answer that question. He did say that there's hours worth of video that has to be viewed, but he has not seen all of the video. He's seen the same video that the public has seen, but he said that to see the rest of the video, he will see that when everyone else sees that as well. So right now he wants justice for his client, Tadarrius Bean, and he also said he wants justice for Tyre Nichols.
Yeah, absolutely. Brittany, I know he was also saying, it was a little bit hard to hear as you were saying, but someone asked a very important question. He kept saying, my client did administer aid. He asked him if he could have air, but someone also asked, did he have a responsibility to stop the other officers who were beating him? And he started to answer that. Can you tell us a little bit of what he was saying there, because it was kind of hard to hear?
Yeah, when he was answering that question, he actually kind of not necessarily went on a tangent, but began to talk about ask the media person who asked him that question to put themselves in his shoes, where you're responding to a call, you're not sure what exactly is happening, you don't know what the person has, you don't know what the person did, and he asked the question back of, have any of you ever arrested anyone before? And naturally all of us said no, but he began to kind of explain what that could be like for an officer when they are responding to a call, and that was his response to that question as to why not jumping in to help out or to stop the other officers. So it was kind of like a roundabout answer. So he responded by asking a question back to the media, basically saying, again, have we ever arrested anyone? Do we know what it's like to be in an officer's position and to be in a position where you may not know what the person that you're pulling over or arresting may have, what they may be doing, what their intentions may be? So that was his response to that question. Aaron?
Yeah, Brittany, and I know we've also been talking about all of the people coming forward with complaints against the Scorpion unit. You've been talking to Tadarrius Harris. Do we know again what time he will or is supposed to be in court today?
We don't have that just yet. I did speak with one of the deputies here right outside of the courtroom where the 5 officers for Tyre Nichols' case or investigation were, and they told me that they weren't sure the exact time as well. But once we leave here and once we finish speaking with everyone, we'll head out there. I do see Attorney District Attorney Steve Morroy. He looks like he's shaking hands with Mr. Van Turner, who is the president of NAACP, the Memphis chapter. I do see the investigator and Ben Crump heading out to a side door. I'm not sure exactly where they're headed, but we're still going to remain outside because we're told that the family will be coming out momentarily. So I'm not sure exactly where they're headed. I'm trying to pick out the side, but I did see them go to the side.
Okay.
We will remain here because it looks like they're starting to stand up on the inside. So it looks like they could be coming out momentarily.
Okay. We will let you make sure that you are there in place for when they do come out. We'll check in with Brittany in just a moment when the family of Tyre Nichols comes out, and Attorney Ben Crump, we are told that they are supposed to speak again after those 5 fired former officers were in court this morning. Again, the court proceedings only took about 5 minutes. They pushed it back till May 1st. If you're just joining us, again, those 5 officers facing several charges, including second-degree murder. And this was the first time that we have seen those 5 officers outside of that video that was released just 3 weeks ago today. We have heard from several people after this court hearing. That includes Attorney Blake Ballin, who is representing Desmond Mills. We've heard from John Keith Perry. He's representing Tadarrius Bean. We've heard from a representative from the district attorney's office saying that right now their job is preserving all of the evidence. We saw that video that was released 3 weeks ago. That was just about an hour. We are told that there are at least 20 hours worth of video in all of this. And we are just continuing to keep updated with this case. You are looking at those 5 officers on your screen. Now, the charges they're facing: second-degree murder, aggravated assault, aggravated kidnapping while possessing a weapon, aggravated kidnapping causing bodily injury, misconduct charges we know they're also facing as well. And again, we know that these 5 officers were part of a Scorpion unit. It's an anti-gang unit that was started just 2 years ago. Mayor Jim Strickland announcing that, I believe in the fall of 2021, saying that these units were supposed to help clean up some neighborhoods. They called them in hotspot neighborhoods. Now, Brittany, I was talking about Monterius Harris. He's someone who has come forward saying that he was also beaten up by the 5 officers who are now charged in Tyre Nichols' death. We have heard several other people come forward saying that they too had complaints against the Scorpion unit. Now, we did talk to the law firm representing Monterius Harris, and they told us that they've gotten at least 5 calls a day since this case unfolded, with people claiming that they also had run-ins with the Scorpion unit. And we heard District Attorney Steve Mulroy say that a lot of times when you get these specialized units, there's a lack of supervision, and that can lead to these units becoming overly aggressive. That law firm said that they've never seen anything like this with just 1 unit. They say that this could lead to damaging lawsuits for the city if these claims prove to be true. We also know that they said that they have gotten a lot of complaints from people living in Hickory Hill, Orange Mound, Whitehaven. We know those are predominantly black neighborhoods in Memphis. That law firm, the Spence law firm, said that they have gotten just numerous calls, and they have all been from black men complaining against this 1 unit. Now, we do know that Monterius Harris was not the only person. Again, I've just mentioned how many people. We also heard from Kadasia Towns. She says she was just trying to get a movie from a red box in Parkway Village. That's when multiple Memphis police officers responding to a shooting came up to her. You're looking at video from her encounter there. She says that's when the situation became hostile. She was later charged with resisting arrest, and her attorney, Carlos Moore, brought up Chief C.J. Davis's previous time with the Atlanta Police Department, the complaints against another organized crime unit that she created in that department. Attorney Moore says that the police department handled other encounters with members of the Scorpion unit properly, that Tyre Nichols could still be alive today. Now, a lot of those people coming forward, they're bringing lawyers and filing lawsuits. Again, I mentioned could be damaging for the city of Memphis, which also means it could be damaging for taxpayers. Well, certified criminal trial specialist Claiborne Ferguson says that most lawsuits filed so far are civil suits, meaning that the people are seeking monetary damages. Ferguson says that won't be a big concern for the 5 officers that are fired and charged in Tyre's death. But of course, again, big concern for us because we're the taxpayers. He suggests the bigger focus for those officers now is the possibility of federal charges. Now, those could carry life sentences. Again, what we saw this morning just on the local level, that's a court hearing again being pushed back to May 1st. Now, as for the city of Memphis, it could be facing monetary liability in the millions if it is proven that there was a lack of training and a pattern of police misconduct, especially within this unit.
There's the potential with the current district attorney that if they find a pattern, a reoccurring pattern of abuse, that they may want to go back and review some of the convictions. In looking at the body cams, it should be pretty easy to determine whether or not there was a course of conduct that was violent to the community of Memphis.
In the lawsuits and responsibility and liability. We're going to go back, check back in with Brittany, who is live outside of the courtroom this morning. We've heard from a lot of people. Brittany, is there any update to when Tyre Nichols' family may be talking?
Real quick, yeah, because they might say something. Let me text Dana and tell her that we're moving, just in case they decide to come to us. Okay. So we've just been told that Attorney Ben Crump and Tyre Nichols' family are actually going to do a press conference, but they're going to do it on another floor. So what we're going to do is we're going to head out to go down to a different floor so that way we can be there for that press conference. They're not going to speak to us outside of the courtroom. As you can imagine, it's kind of chaotic and a little, not enough space. So they are moving us down to a different floor so that way we can hear from Attorney Ben Crump and the family of Tyre Nichols shortly. So I'm going to take it back to you, Aaron, and we're going to head down there so that way we can be set up in time for that press conference.
Now we will check back in with you in just a moment. Brittany, thank you for staying on top of that outside of the courtroom. Again, if you are just joining us this morning, just about an hour ago now, the 5 fired former Memphis police officers charged in the death of Tyre Nichols had their first court appearance. Now, it only lasted about 5 minutes. The judge said that he is asking for patience in a case like this, and he pushed the next court date to May 1st. So that is the next time that those officers will be in court. And again, when they walked into the courtroom, this was the first time that we actually got to see those 5 officers outside of that video that was released just 3 weeks ago today. We've heard from several of their attorneys, one representing Blake Ballin, representing Desmond Mills, as well as John Keith Perry, who represents Tadarrius Bean. Now, from those 2 attorneys, they're also asking, while they did show remorse for Tyre Nichols' family, they say that they're also asking for justice for their clients. Blake Ballin saying his client, Desmond Mills, is pleading not guilty. John Keith Perry saying that he said his client, Tadarrius Bean, never hit Nichols. Those are just some of the new things that we have heard out of this case. Again, we just saw about an hour worth of video about 3 weeks ago, but we are told that there are at least 20 hours of video and discovery and information and evidence when it comes to this case. But again, February 17th, the first time we have seen those officers in court, but it has taken a while since that January 7th day to get to here. So let's take a look at everything that has happened within that time. On January 7th, officers pulled over Tyre Nichols near Rains and Ross Road in Hickory Hill. They said he was driving recklessly. During a first encounter, video shows officers yanking Nichols out of the car and throwing him on the ground. Nichols then runs away. Video shows the officers catching up to him near Castle Gate and Bear Creek, then beating him. It took several minutes before medics helped Nichols and an ambulance took him to the hospital. Nichols then spent the next 3 days on life support in the hospital. On January 10th, 3 days after his traffic stop, the Tennessee Bureau of Investigation announced Nichols died from his injuries. More than a week later, on January 18th, the Department of Justice announced its civil rights investigation into Tyre Nichols' death. Then on Friday, January 20th, Memphis police named and fired 5 officers involved. On Monday, the 23rd, the family's autopsy report revealed Nichols died from extensive bleeding caused by a severe beating. This happened the same day the family viewed the video of the beating. On January 26th, nearly 3 weeks after the initial traffic stop, the 5 officers involved now arrested and charged. 4 days later, on January 30th, MPD releasing the name of a 6th officer involved who's now fired. February 1st, Tyre Nichols' family laid him to rest. We have spent a lot of this morning talking about the officers, but I do know that we had that video of Tyre Nichols skateboarding. Can we get that up on screen? Let's take a moment to remember the person that unfortunately is no longer with us today. This is Tyre Nichols, just 29 years old. His mother, Rovon Wells, saying he was coming from Shelby Farms when that traffic stop happened. It was one of his favorite places in the city. He was actually from Sacramento, born in Sacramento. He had moved down to Memphis with his parents, Rovon and Rodney Wells, during the pandemic. He was trying to work to make a better life for him and his son just 4 years old. His mother saying he loved photography and skateboarding. Again, that funeral for Tyre Nichols was February 1st. It was at Mississippi Boulevard. Reverend Al Sharpton delivered the eulogy there. Again, bringing that call for justice for this 29-year-old you see on your screen right now. His mother often saying that she believes her son was sent on an assignment, that this doesn't happen to anyone else. Unfortunately, through this case, we have heard from a lot of other people saying that they have had run-ins with the same unit that those 5 officers were part of, that Scorpion unit, saying that they too were treated badly. A lot of law firms saying that the Scorpion unit and the potential clients that have come forward are black men from predominantly black neighborhoods in Memphis, Hickory Hill, Orange Mound, Whitehaven. We know Hickory Hill is where Tyre Nichols was stopped. That video, really tough to watch, showing Nichols being yanked out of the car. Officers yelling at him saying, "I'm just trying to get home," knowing that Castlegate and Bear Creek was just yards away from his mother's house. That is where that beating that sent him to the hospital on life support took place. But again, remembering Tyre Nichols, the 29-year-old, loved skateboarding, loved the 49ers, because again, from Sacramento, also was a father, a brother, all of his family coming in for that funeral that happened just a few weeks ago. Now, that also brings us to today. Again, that case was reset to May 1st. All 5 officers involved in Tyre Nichols' death did again work under that Scorpion unit. It was part of the Memphis Police Department. It was supposed to be an anti-gang unit to clean up hot spots, but from what we've heard from several people who've had run-ins with them, that it has, as DA Mulroy said, that these specialized units can lack supervision and can become overly aggressive. And a lot of people are starting to come forward saying that that was the case with them and this unit. Again, that has lawyers saying that because of what's happened with these 5 officers and being in court today, that means that a lot of these cases that these officers have worked with, well, they could be up for review. They could be subject to lawsuits. That could mean that the city is going to have to pay up millions. And if you think about it, that could have a tumble-down effect to taxpayers having to pay up millions because of this unit. And a lot has come out. CJ Davis on the line because she also jump-started this unit. It's very similar to one that she had in Atlanta that was also shut down. Again, Mayor Jim Strickland announcing the start of the Scorpion unit in the fall, I said earlier, but November 12th, 2021, that is when the officers of the Scorpion unit hit the streets for the very first time. A Scorpion, if you're not familiar, it's an acronym. It stands for Street Crimes Operation to Restore Peace. The purpose, again, supposed to focus on reducing violent crimes. It was the homicides, the carjackings that we have heard and talked about and unfortunately seen or maybe even been witness to in Memphis all too often. It was supposed to be in hotspot areas or high crime areas throughout the city. But from what we have seen from people coming forward, it seems that those neighborhoods have been in predominantly black neighborhoods. And we don't know a lot about it, the training that comes with this unit or the requirements to be in the Scorpion unit. What we do know, though, is Chief Davis did run that similar unit in Atlanta, and it was called the Red Dog Unit, another specialized unit, again, that is disbanded. Now, we have talked a lot about the 5 officers there, and we also know there was a 6th officer who was on scene, Preston Hemphill. Now, he isn't in court today, but he is fired. They also say that he was the one that initially deployed his taser at Tyre Nichols. If you watch that really horrifying video, in that first video, he deployed his taser while Tyre was running away into oncoming traffic, got in trouble for that. We're not sure when his first court date will be, but again, we will continue to keep you updated on that. We have talked a lot about the Scorpion unit. Hemphill was part of that as well with those 5 officers. They have been facing several allegations and complaints beyond Tyre Nichols' death. Also in court today, Montarius Harris. If you had joined us earlier, you heard Brittany talking a lot about him. She actually spoke to him earlier. Now, Montarius Harris, he is a young man who says he too was a victim of these specific 5 officers who were in court today. We also have heard in the past few weeks from Khadijah Towns. She says she was just trying to get a movie from a red box in Parkway Village, and that's when multiple Memphis police officers responding to a shooting came up to her. We actually have video of when she says that her situation became hostile. Not sure if we have it, but she says she was later charged with resisting arrest. Her attorney, Carlos Moore, bringing up again that Chief C.J. Davis previous time in Atlanta with the Red Dog Unit and the complaints against another organized crime unit that she started there, the Red Dog Unit. Attorney Moore says he believes if the police department had handled other encounters with members of the Scorpion unit properly, Tyre Nichols could still be alive today. Going back to Montarius Harris, Brittany's been staying on top of his case. He is actually supposed to be in court today because of the charges he's facing in relation to the Scorpion unit, but that is just an example. Who knows what will happen with his case, because the officers who he said arrested him, who he said harassed him, are these 5 former officers who are also in court today. So does this mean now that all of their cases are going to be looked at, possibly dismissed or overturned? That would include Harris's and several others, and that could bring lawsuits against the police department, the city. We already know that a lot of them are hiring lawyers and filing lawsuits. We did speak to certified criminal trial specialist Claiborne Ferguson. He says that most of the lawsuits right now that have been filed are civil suits, meaning that the people are just seeking monetary damages. But Ferguson says that won't be a big concern for the 5 former officers charged in Nichols' death. He does suggest the bigger focus for them now is the possibility of federal charges after they go through the court case here on the local level. But those federal charges, they could carry life sentences for these men. As for the city of Memphis, again, it could be facing a lot of money on the line, liable in millions if it is proven that there was a lack of training and pattern of police misconduct.
There's the potential with the current district attorney that if they find a pattern, a reoccurring pattern of abuse, that they may want to go back and review some of the convictions. In looking at the body cams, it should be pretty easy to determine whether or not there was a course of conduct that was violent to the community of Memphis.
Unfolding, we've been seeing activists take to the streets, numerous protests in the weeks since his death, the weeks since the video was released. Again, that was just 3 weeks ago. Very tough video to watch, but activists have been coming to all of the court cases or court hearings, press conferences, speaking out. We heard some of the defense attorneys speaking earlier about their clients, activists really upset, kind of holding them accountable, bucking up against them rather, and some of the things that they were saying. Again, if you are just joining us, the court hearing for those 5 former officers was this morning about an hour ago at 9. It started pretty promptly on time, only lasted about 5 minutes. The judge asking for patience, pushing back the court date until the 1st. We were supposed to hear how those officers were pleading in this case. We only know right now, Blake Ballin, the attorney for Desmond Mills, says that his client is pleading not guilty. He said that he wants justice for Tyre's family, but also justice for his client. We also know that John Keith Perry, he is one of the defense attorneys for Tadarrius Bean. He's one that activists were really talking to outside of that courtroom earlier today. He came out saying his client is innocent until proven guilty. He also says that there are a lot of untrue statements out there about his client. He said his client was just doing his job, that he was never part of the first arrest, and that his client came to the second scene not knowing what was going on. He said his client never hit Nichols. Now, our crew on the scene did ask, but he didn't stop Nichols from being beaten. Does that hold him liable? The attorney couldn't really answer that question. He said that he feels due process is not being placed properly with his client, again, Tadarrius Bean. He also said that Bean did help Nichols. He told Nichols to sit up and try to get some air. We again asked if that counts as administering aid. He wasn't quite clear on his answer with that one either, but he said that his client, Tadarrius Bean, again, was never on that first scene. Now, we've also heard from the district attorney's office. We heard from a representative who was expressing how important it is that evidence is preserved in this case. 3 weeks ago today, we saw that horrific video. That was just about an hour of video. But they say there are 20 hours of video in this case that have yet to be released. That is the evidence that they are trying to preserve, the evidence that will surely be coming out as this case goes to trial in the weeks to come. The defense attorney saying that they haven't seen all of that video yet. They said, we'll see it when the public sees it. So again, we also heard from District Attorney Steve Mulroy. He was talking about the level of reform. We've been hearing this from our county council, city council, a lot of our elected officials now looking at ways to reform the Memphis Police Department and policing in Memphis and the Mid-South in general. But District Attorney Steve Mulroy was talking about these specialized units. Again, these 5 officers on your screen right now, part of the Scorpion unit. It was an anti-gang unit, but he says these specialized units can lack supervision. That's something they're looking into, the training, the supervision in these units. He says these specialized units can become overly aggressive, and that is what we saw on that video, he says, and he says that is something that they are looking into. Earlier, the day that the video was released, Chief C.J. Davis got on and told us that she was not called about this until 4 that morning. Again, we know that the initial traffic stop happened around 8. We are also being told that the family of Tyre Nichols, Rovan, and Rodney Wells and Ben Crump are holding that press conference we've been waiting to hear, so we're going to listen in now.
Give us just a few minutes. We're waiting for a couple of the media representatives to set up.
We can switch it up if we need. He's on. We could just. We can just.
Yeah.
Excuse me. Did you? Go ahead. Yeah, go ahead.
Just two benches to your left.
Left?
Yeah,
To my
to your right. No.
This way.
Thank you.
Okay. Is everyone ready? Okay. Good morning. I'm Attorney Ben Crump, along with Attorney Tony Raminucci, Judge Ernestine Doris, and Attorney Van Turner, who's also the president of the NAACP chapter here in Memphis, Tennessee. Kareem Ali, my investigator, and our legal team. We have the honor of representing the family of Tyre Nichols. Present with us is his family members, in particularly his mother, Rovon Wells, and his father, Rodney Wells, who will give very brief statements this morning in the aftermath of the arraignment of the 5 officers that have been indicted for the murder of Tyre Nichols. Also, it's important to note that this was very emotional, and there were a lot of things that were not said in the courtroom today in the proceeding, but it was a very informative day as we move closer to justice. And our legal team and the family of Tyre Nichols wish to express gratitude to District Attorney Steve Mulroy, Paul Hagerman, and the entire District Attorney's team who is charged with prosecuting this matter on behalf of Tyre Nichols, as they do with every citizen in this jurisdiction. We are again relieved that they have given information to try to dispel some of these rumors and innuendo that we keep being bombarded about, that somehow this was something personal. No, we are aware that there were photographs that were taken and none of them were sent to all of these rumors that are out there in the social media world. The family is dealing with enough grieving the death of Tyre and their brave fight for justice than to have to deal with all these salacious rumors. I know in George Floyd, they had to deal with them talking about Chauvin knew somebody who George Floyd knew, and that was the reason he kept his knee on his neck. And then in Botham Jean's case, who was killed in the apartment by the white policewoman, they alleged that they were having some kind of affair, which all were bogus and untrue. And just like with Tyre Nichols, all these rumors that are circulating are bogus and untrue, because we have the text messages. The prosecutors have been able to verify exactly who those pictures were sent to. And so what we want to remain laser focused on is getting justice for Tyre Nichols and being able to define the legacy of Tyre Nichols. And the people who are most appropriate to do that is his mother and their family. So you're going to hear from Rodney Wells, and then we're going to introduce Miss Rovon Wells to talk about how they felt and why they had to be here today for this arraignment of the former Memphis police officers who are charged with murdering Tyre Nichols. And I think it's important to note that even though we want everybody to get due process, we are champions for equal justice and due process. But as Police Chief Davis said, Judge Doris, it's important that we take swift action. It's important that we move swiftly towards justice. So we don't want there to be any unnecessary delays in prosecuting this case with respect to everybody having their day in court. Those officers get to have their day in court, but my guy, Ravon Wells and Rodney Wells, get to have their day in court, and we don't want this to be forever. We got video. When people in our community do something on video, it don't take a long time to prosecute them, right, Attorney Turner?
That's right.
It don't take a long time. And so, first you will hear from Mr. Rodney Wells, the father of Tyre Nichols.
Hi, everybody. My name is Rodney Wells. I had to be here today to make sure that justice gets done for our son. This is a glorious day. This is the beginning of the process. So, statement's going to be very short, and I'm just glad to be here. Our family's glad to be here, and I appreciate everybody coming out.
Thank you, Mr. Wells. And now you will hear from Tyre's mother, Miss Ravon Wells.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for being here. As my husband stated, this is the beginning of the process. We're going to be here at every court date so that they can know that we're here. They need to, I don't know, I feel, it's funny because I feel very numb right now. I feel very numb, and I'm waiting for this nightmare, basically, that I'm going through right now. I'm waiting for somebody to wake me up, right? I'm really waiting for somebody to wake me up. But I also know that's not going to happen, okay? I know my son is gone. I know I'll never see him again. But we have to start this process of justice right now. And I want each and every one of those police officers to be able to look me in the face. They haven't done that yet. They couldn't even do that today. They didn't even have the courage to look at me in my face after what they did to my son. So they're gonna see me at every court date, everyone.
Exactly.
And until we get justice for my son.
Amen. Hold up.
And so, yes.
And note the choice of words that Ravon used. As she told Judge Dorsey and us, they didn't have the courage to look me in my face. Not dignity to look me in my face, because when you look at the video, there was no dignity there. But they didn't even have the courage to look at her in her face, and that's what she came to the courtroom to see today. Them look her in her face, eye to eye. How could you do this to my son?
And they didn't.
Okay.
What did you
No. Wait. Are you finished?
Yes.
Okay. All right. We'll take a few questions.
Ravon, what did you think when you heard the words, not guilty?
Well, sir, they're going to say that. You know, that's a procedure that everyone's going to say and do. I'm going to leave it up to the district attorney's office and to get them prosecuted and everything, and then they'll find them not guilty. They'll find them guilty, I should say. So them saying they're not guilty, that's a preliminary thing. Everybody's going to say that. And I was expecting it, so it wasn't nothing new.
Okay. Judge Ernestine Dorsey is going to make some remarks before we continue the questions. Judge Dorsey says,
retired Judge Ernestine Hunt Dorsey, and let's not get me out of place, because I want you to know that the process is the process, and I'm about transparency, so that's the first thing I had to tell you. I was retired, but it's good to see the country and the state still interested in what's happening in our community, and especially in the prosecution of this case, because this case is a case that's pretty much going to be a cornerstone. You know, when the builders start rejecting stones, but this is going to be a cornerstone that the builders would not be able to reject. So that is what I see, and
The process is.
the process is.
Yeah.
Can you lay out what you think the next year will be in terms of this case? So the next hearing is in May, and then what is the next?
Well,
I can only do it. I mean, I've been a trial lawyer, and I can tell you the process. It's not as swift. It's not as swift as the indictment, but the indictment was the most important thing to get the wheels of justice to truly roll. And so this is going to be processed, and it's not necessarily going to be held up by trying to slow the process. It's just how time is. And so most criminal cases don't come to trial, and I'm assuming this is going to go to trial. That can't tell you how long, but it's not going to be at the end of this year.
Steve, we know, like in George Floyd's case and Ahmaud Arbery's case, that there may be federal charges brought here. And so we want there to be full justice. And so as we look at the process on the state, we understand, just like in George Floyd, there may be federal charges contemplated that may be announced, and then they would take a parallel course. But we know in George Floyd's tragic killing that those officers were prosecuted within the year. So the hope is that we have a blueprint going forward on all these tragedies. Before we take any other questions, Attorney Van Turner, would you like to give a remark?
Yeah. We again want to thank Ms. Robon Wells for her courage, Mr. Rodney Wells for his courage. It takes a lot to sit there in the courtroom and to face individuals who took actions that they did not have to take. Nothing that evening that we saw, that you saw, provoked them to do what they did to Tyre Nichols. And here we have a family, we have a son that's lost a father, and we just, we feel their pain, and we're going to be here with them throughout the way. But let's also understand that this case is going to be a landmark decision, but it also needs to lead to policy. How do we stop this from happening again? The state needs to pass the Tyre Nichols Police Reform Act.
Amen.
We need the governor to sign the bill. The governor, Bill Lee, needs to stand up for this family. We want the thoughts, we want the prayers, but we want action.
Amen.
We want this bill passed right now, the Tyre Nichols Police Reform Act. We want them to withdraw the bill to get rid of clerk. The Citizen Law Enforcement Review Board is what we have. That's the citizens' eyes over law enforcement. The police can't continue to police themselves.
Yes.
So if we are really serious about justice for Tyre, we want to make sure that there's a swift prosecution and that these guys serve the time for what they did, and we want to make sure that there's swift action at the Tennessee legislature with passing this bill, and we want them to immediately withdraw the bill that would undo clerk right now, today. Yes. We want them to withdraw that bill because that's the citizens' eyes over law enforcement. We're going to continue to pray for this family, and we're going to continue to say justice for Tyre.
Justice for Tyre. Thank you so much, President Turner, for your leadership. You good?
I'm good.
Okay.
Ms. Ravon, since January 7th, your life has been completely upended. Your family's been scrutinized. The whole world has been watching your family. But you've responded with grace and compassion that you owe no one. So I wanted to ask you, what's holding you together right now, and what is sustaining both you and Mr. Wells?
Well, the only thing I can tell you is the prayer. I have people reached out to me from all over the world. I have received sympathy cards from people that I don't even know. People are praying for our family. God is what's holding us up. And the fact that, again, I have to always keep in mind that my son was sacrificed for the greater good. That's what's holding me up, and that's what's keeping me together. And the fact that I do have 3 other children that I have to stay strong for. Because if I break down, then they're going to break down. So me being a mother, I have to stay as strong as I can for my other children.
Amen. Yes, ma'am. And then we'll come to you.
Justice for Tyre Nichols, not at the expense of justice for
Certainly, the video speaks for itself.
Mr. Crump, you mentioned the photographs that were taken from the scene. Police Chief Davis has said they've been shared with other people. You said the prosecution talked to you about those photographs. Do you know who those photographs were shared with?
Apparently, this isn't the first time that particular officer has done this, but we just wanted to dispel the rumors that the family were being bombarded with, and they didn't want to have to deal with that additional trauma and drama. So we want to clear that up once and for all.
Do you know who they were?
We do not, but they know. Yeah.
Can you elaborate on the findings of your internal or independent autopsy results, specifically related to any substances being in Tyre's body that those officers agreed to on that video?
No, we don't have the toxicology yet, but we feel confident that Tyre was not under any kind of intoxication or anything like that. You know, Miss Ravon and Rodney, they know Tyre and what kind of person he was. Who Tyre was what you saw in that video. While everybody else was escalating it, using excessive force, Tyre was de-escalating, trying to do everything in his power to remain calm. That's who Tyre Nichols was.
Actually, that also, piggybacking off of that, we know that the incident report that was authored that night does not line up exactly with reality. One of those quotes from that report says that the officers came in contact with you that you thought your son's drink might have been spiked. Was that a fabrication?
Taken out of context.
It was something taken out of context.
And so the prosecutor will deal with all of that.
Yeah, I can't go any further with it, but it was taken out of context.
Completely out of context. Completely taken out of context. We think that from the beginning it was a conspiracy to cover up this murder.
Yes.
Ben, can I ask? The city has said that it's going to release more video and recordings. Are they going to offer you to see those first?
Yes, they did say that. We don't know when, but they said they would, out of respect for the family, they would let them see and hear the videos.
Ben, should Preston Hemphill, the 6th officer who was at the scene when Tyre was first stopped, should he face charges?
Well, certainly Miss Ravon Wells is asking that question, and so it is our hope that every officer who had anything to do with the death of her son will be held accountable, and we will leave that for the prosecutors.
Mr. Crump, what is the timing of any civil litigation against the city of Memphis?
Well, we're trying to get the completed autopsy report in our hands, but we will be seeking full justice for Tyre Nichols. That is criminal culpability, civil accountability, and as my co-counsel Van Turner said, policy. We want legislative action, because getting justice for Tyre isn't about just having accountability of these officers. It's about trying to prevent anybody else from being killed in this manner. One last question, ma'am.
Mr. Crump, you said that you saw the text that went along with the picture. Can you tell us?
No, I didn't see the text. They told us about the text, and they told us that all of this stuff that is rampant out there on social media is completely untrue. It's bogus, and they know that the text messages who they went to had nothing to do with all this stuff that you all have been hearing on social media, and some of you have reported. And the only reason that they thought it was important, and I think it's important to speak to it, so they will quit harassing the family over this ancillary matter, has nothing to do with the reason why this happened to Tyre Nichols. This Scorpion unit had a pattern and practice of doing this to black people in Memphis. That's it. You don't need to go no further than that. We talk about these special police units or these proactive policing, and they do this stuff in marginalized communities of color, where they trample on the constitutional rights and human rights of black and brown citizens. They don't do that in the white communities to white citizens. That is why Tyre Nichols was killed, because of this excessive force policing of black citizens. Thank you.
Mr. Crumble, I live in the city of Memphis. A lot of Memphians are concerned that these officers are still on the street. A lot of these officers are still on the street.
Yes, ma'am.
I mean, they've been rearranged. What do you, should
You were just hearing from Attorney Ben Crump, the family of Tyre Nichols, Rovon and Rodney Wells, as well as Van Turner, the NAACP chapter president here in Memphis. Again, this is following the first court hearing for the 5 fired former Memphis police officers charged in the death of Tyre Nichols, 29-year-old. You see on your screen, loves skateboarding, coming home from Shelby Farms, another place he loved, when he was pulled over for a traffic stop in Hickory Hills near Ross and Rains. And that horrific video a lot of us saw that led to a beating that put him in the hospital on ICU for 3 days before he ended up dying from his injuries. Hearing his mother, always hearing Rovon Wells talk, just heartbreaking. She says she is going to be at every court date that these officers have to get justice for her son. Something else just stark that just sits with you. She says they didn't have the courage to look me in my face talking about those 5 officers. She said they killed her baby, her son, and she wants those officers to be able to look her in her face, and that is why they say they will be at every court date from here on out. She said she feels numb. She says she's waiting to be woken up from this nightmare, but she knows she never will be, that she will never see her son again. Again, that is why today is happening. February 17th, the first day these officers were in court, charged with second-degree murder, as well as several other charges in the death of Tyre Nichols. Now, our Lakita Johnson has been inside the courtroom earlier this morning. She is live outside of the courtroom. You just heard that press conference. Really tough, always tough to hear his mom speak. Just really heartbreaking. But Lakita, I know it was a hard day for that family. What has the mood been like there and in the courtroom, outside of the courtroom today?
Yeah, Aaron, you know, this press conference, when Ms. Rovon Wells started off speaking, she was speechless. And it took her a while to gather her thoughts. And the words that she spoke out, there were a lot of important points here, but I want to go back to the beginning of that press conference when Attorney Ben Crump spoke about, you know, how the family they're thankful now that those rumors have been suspended, because they're thankful that the prosecutors have been able to identify who those photos have been sent to. So he says in his words that those rumors are bogus. Anything that's been heard online, it's all a lie. And then when Ms. Rovon Wells got up to speak, and she says in her words, Aaron, as you said, that she says that she's waiting for this nightmare to just be over, but she also knows that it's not going to happen. She's not going to see her son again. And then the question was asked to a former judge, Ernestine Doris, and she says that, you know, the process is not as swift as the indictment, but the indictment was the most important thing that happened and able to get this whole process moving along. But she says that she can't see a trial happening at the end of the year. She says that she could see it happening much sooner than that. And so, of course, we're staying tuned into what's going on. Now, that court date has been reset to May. So we'll keep you guys updated, and we'll, of course, continue to follow this. Aaron.
Kita, again, hearing one of the main things Attorney Crump said when he started that press conference that Lakita said, dispelling any rumors of what these officers did that we saw in that video to Tyre Nichols as being personal. He says it wasn't. Those are salacious rumors, his words. He said they did not know Tyre Nichols, and the family has been bombarded with these salacious rumors, he said, that just are not true. Now, we also know from that press conference, as Lakita said, a retired judge said that we will not see a trial happen before the end of the year, most likely. We also know that Van Turner, the president of the Memphis NAACP chapter, says that they want the Tyre Nichols Police Reform Act passed in the state. They want swift action. And one of the most important things that he says is withdrawing a bill that is making its way through the Tennessee State House right now that would get rid of citizen review boards. It would give that power to mayors in cities and townships. And they say that that is giving cities too much power. Again, they want to bring it back to citizens having the power to actually do something when incidents of excessive force happen. We've also had our Brittany Moncrief at the courthouse all morning. And Brittany, can you tell us what you're seeing from where you are?
So I was like, I might as well just stay down here.
Well, Aaron, right now, the family of Tyre Nichols, they have just left the courthouse moments after the press conference. They took a few questions, and then after those questions, they all got into cars and they have gone away. There's still some people, just people in the community leaders that are still here outside of the courthouse. I just saw NAACP President Van Turner. There's also some local ministers, some former judges that are still out here. But right now, it's mostly just media. Again, we just listened to Attorney Ben Crump and his team, as well as Tyre Nichols' family, speak to us. And the three things that they said that they want to do in this process. One, they said they wanted a swift process and swift justice. But the three things that they want in this process is, first, they're waiting for the autopsy, the complete autopsy. And then they want criminal culpability, civil accountability, and policy. You heard Van Turner speak about the Tyre Nichols law. So they want to change policy. They want police reform. Some of the other things that we heard today was actually coming straight from Tyre Nichols' mother, Rovon Wells. And she said that while she was in the courtroom, the 5 officers didn't have the courage to look her in the face. And she said that she hopes she'll be here at every court hearing until justice is given to her son, Tyre Nichols. We are still, again, outside of the courthouse. We've heard from many people today, coming from the DA's office with District Attorney Steve Morroy. We've also heard from 2 of the lawyers from the 5 officers who are charged in Tyre Nichols' death. We heard from Tadarrius Bean's lawyer, as well as Desmond Mills' lawyer, both of them claiming justice for their clients, but also justice for Tyre Nichols. Tadarrius Bean's lawyer saying that his client was not at the initial scene of the traffic stop of Tyre Nichols, but was at the second scene. He claims that his client did not participate in the beating. He also said that his client could be heard on camera saying and asking Tyre if he has enough air. Now, we asked him, does that mean that he's rendered aid by asking him if he had enough air? And he wasn't able to fully answer that question. He did say to us, the media, that if we tried to put ourselves in that position as an officer doing it, making an arrest. We also heard from members of the DA's office again, and they said that they want to see some policy changes happen in the wake of Tyre Nichols' death. So you're hearing a lot from different community members, different community leaders, Tyre Nichols' family, and they're calling for overall justice. They want to see change so that what happened to Tyre Nichols doesn't happen again. And one of the other things that was mentioned today in the press conference with Tyre Nichols' family and Attorney Ben Crump is the rumors that have been going around. There's been various rumors that are out there on social media. Ben Crump even saying that the family has been contacted about these rumors and it's harassment. And so what he wanted to do was first lay those rumors to rest. He did say, yes, there was a picture taken of Tyre Nichols by one of the officers, and that did go around, and they are working to see who that text message of that picture was sent to. He also mentioned that this wasn't the first time that the officer who took that picture has done something like this. So they are looking further into this. And again, Ben Crump said they're waiting for a complete autopsy so that way they can move forward with criminal charges as well as civil charges. And overall, they want policy change. Aaron?
All right. Thank you, Brittany, for staying on top of this all morning long. Again, those 5 fired former officers in court about 2 hours ago, now all pleading not guilty to the death of Tyre Nichols. Again, their court date being pushed back to May 1st. That is the next time they will be in court on these charges that they're facing, including second-degree murder. That is all for our special report of this court hearing. Again, we will have the updates later on at midday, and when I mean later on, in just about 20 minutes. So make sure you join us then. But of course, to continue to stay updated on all of the latest developments in the Tyre Nichols case, make sure that you download our ABC 24 app. It is free in the Apple App Store and Google Play. But you can also send a text with the word app, just that, to the number on your screen. It's 901-321-7520. We'll be able to send you a link where you can download that app directly to your phone. Of course, we will keep you updated online at abc24.com as well, but we will again have the latest in this case on ABC 24.